I think we've got a great session. Just a couple preliminaries. Catherine, if you flip to the next slide, I want to make sure everybody knows who's on. One of the cool things for everybody that's signed up, in addition to the great content you're going to hear today from these brilliant minds, we've also arranged for, and big thanks to PitchBook, that anybody who participates, you'll get complimentary access to PitchBook. And there's just a lot more data behind the comments you're going to hear today. Alex is going to highlight a few of his reports, but he's got dozens out there, and I definitely encourage you to take advantage. This is a really good time to kind of dig into the numbers and the analysis about the space out there, especially if you're a small entrepreneur looking to dimension the size of your market, find some power stats that might draw some investors closer to you. But the PitchBook platform is absolutely fantastic. I eat it for breakfast every morning, and no one is paying me to say that. Okay, so and thanks again to the PitchBook team for making that available. So and I also want to do a little just to give a flavor of how timely this is. Alex, I think late last night, just sent me a report that just showed up on PitchBook today. He'll talk about it, but there's a lot of new content that I think all of you can kind of take to the bank. I mean, part of the reason why we're doing these webinars is to empower you to go back to your market, your skeptical CEO, your investors that are kind of on the fence, those team members that you might want to recruit, and give you the power and the data that makes the sale. And so this is why, this and Earth Day is a great context to get people to stop thinking about other things and focus on, the topic at hand. So we want to empower you. So we're very excited. We've got just-in-time data. Okay. A little bit about Cinterfuge for those of you who don't know. We and I know we've got quite a few signups from outside of Greater Cincinnati. We are dedicated to building a world-class tech economy. We have three primary instruments that we use, and they're very interdependent. We've got a syndicate fund of funds, about 120 million in invested capital, that major corporations dedicated to the future, Kroger, P&G, Cincinnati Bell, Scripps, Western and Southern, they invest in that. And we look for the innovators and the innovations that can really kind of change, can drive the future. And we also use that to ideally drive more startup creation in Cincinnati. We have a whole storefront of services for any entrepreneur, whatever size you are, to walk in the door. We will do anything we can to empower you to kind of push that dream. And we are focusing a lot on the green space, not surprisingly. And then we also have lots of innovation services for big cos. We take a lot of pride in helping large companies think and act like a startup. A little context for our discussion today. About a year ago, I posted something on LinkedIn that got a surprising amount of traction. And I kind of put out this hypothesis that the Midwest is resetting the global sustainability curve. And one of the big surprises for me, and prior to coming back to Cincinnati, I spent 8 years at Nestle worldwide leading digital and social media. When I kind of came back and looked under the hood of what was going on in Cincinnati and the Midwest, I saw a remarkable amount of activity. And as a native Californian, I had a little bit of that stereotype of, well, only the coast can innovate, only these progressive cities. But in fact, there was so much activity going on that I started to dig deeper. And then I started to look at the commitments of the big companies that are trying to reinvent their future, and saw a lot of opportunity. And this also comes at a time when there's a lot of policy guidance and about shifting more capital to the central part of the United States, and obviously a lot on climate tech, which we'll talk about here. Go ahead, Catherine, flip to the next. We have been trying to figure out where our region has a right to win. And in every city across America that's kind of pushing a tech economy, there's always a few pillars where there's extra focus. So I think areas like Detroit are building a great narrative around mobility, Nashville and Memphis around health tech. Pittsburgh's doing a great job around AI. And we've identified a few areas such as future branding and retail, connected health and supply chain and logistics. And what's interesting about sustainability is it's what we call an urgency catalyst that cuts across all three areas. And I'll give a good illustration of that. Both Tisha and I were on a major task force here in Cincinnati with supply chain leads across most of the major corporations and a number of our fast-growing startups. And we reflected on how supply chains have changed in the wake of COVID. And we subdivided into 3 different tracks of work that we thought were absolutely kind of critical for defining the future of supply chains. One was tech future of freight. And that's interesting for Cincinnati because Amazon just moved into our airport. So we're now technically the #1 e-commerce distribution hub in the country, but there's a lot of sustainability thinking around last mile delivery, efficient packaging and the like. And then we had a track that Tisha led called Seed from Food to Plate, where we really explored this question that we're going to dive into now around whether there's big potential to develop sustainable food supply chains in almost less likely geographies like the Midwest, where the cost of scaling is much more attractive. And then we put a lot of thinking around circular economy, zero waste. And in fact, just a few minutes ago, I think I have a slide. Do I have a slide on this one? I'll jump one more ahead. We just had a great session, and we can send you the link with Sunny Parr of Kroger that they have set a moonshot goal of zero hunger, zero waste, and they are really, really doing it. And they're working with startups, mark my word. And what's cool is that they're right down the street. If you go back to the previous one, Tisha will talk about this, but this is an example of one of the tracks that we pursued as part of this supply chain work, where we kind of defined the opportunity, outlined a number of initiatives, and what is going on in the back of our head, and this kind of maps to the work that Alex is doing, is identifying areas where startups can come to the Midwest and, you know, kind of meet that critical need. And so the timing for this conversation is just perfect because everybody's thinking about growth. Everybody's thinking about these big issues that are out there. So without further ado, let's jump to the next slide. Jump one more ahead. We have got 2 fantastic speakers. I will try to do less talking and more moderating, but Alex Frederick has authored, I think, some of the most important reports in the industry right now. Yes, I'm biased, but I do think that the work that he's done around like today with sustainable supply chains, food and ag tech are really, really important. And when you get your access to PitchBook, you can download those reports. And so we're gonna dive deeply into that. And then Tisha Livingston, I don't know how much, I'm not even sure I can do justice to the story that's emerging around 80 Acres and the division that she runs called Infinite Acres. But they are really redefining the future of food. We typically talk about vertical farming, but it's so much more than that. And Tisha is actually in Europe right now because she is leading a joint venture with Ocado and others to kind of bring what Cincinnati has incubated to Europe, which I think is a really cool concept. So what I wanted to do is let each of you introduce yourselves and maybe start with, let's just kind of start with the big question of just how big is, in fact, don't talk about the regional part yet. Just give the high notes on how big the sustainability tech opportunity is worldwide. And then we'll kind of narrow down to, you know, the Midwest. How's that? So who wants to start? Alex, you want to kick us off? The big report writer?
Sure. So talking about
Tell us a little bit about your background and then
sure.
a little bit about your recent thinking about the question.
Definitely. So background, formerly used to work at a food, wine, and spirit company called Constellation Brand. So I have a bit of a food background. Also worked at a few different, worked in an impact investing fund and a food family focused family office out of Chicago. But I've been at PitchBook for about a couple years, really passionate about the food and beverage industry and about learning about new innovation in the space. And so I've been for the past few years just really honing in on identifying where the emerging technologies and emerging opportunities in within food and ag. So cover basically those two sectors, food tech and ag tech, and have covered areas within them such as indoor ag, and now have just kicked off a series on sustainable food in the supply chain and kind of exploding the whole supply chain and talking about some of the opportunities for sustainability innovation there.
Fantastic. And then a quick word on the size of the space.
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways to slice that. So yeah, the opportunity is absolutely massive when you think about sustainability throughout the entire supply chain. There's, I don't have specific numbers there, but thinking about all the different areas for waste and the millions of tons of food that are wasted in throughout the entire supply chain, that's really a definitely in the hundreds of billions in terms of market size. And then climate tech as well, absolutely massive opportunity. Let's see. Oh, so indoor ag, and we have that pegged as a $112 billion market, growing to 131 billion. So really large opportunity there. Thinking about the potential revenue generation of technology companies coming in and developing emerging technologies to build out the infrastructure, and then the actual produce revenue generation used through indoor ag.
So not small.
No, none of these spaces are small, and they're definitely just getting started as well.
Okay, big numbers to kick us off. Tisha.
All right, thanks for the confirmation, Alex. So I'm Tisha Livingston. My background, 25 years in the food industry. I am a Cincinnati native. My most recent job was prior to starting 80 Acres. I was the chief operating officer for a division of Del Monte Foods. And prior to that, I held a lot of different jobs within food companies, running operations, running manufacturing, running continuous improvement, and then also working on the operational finance side, doing due diligence, and then integrating companies. When my business partner, Mike Zelkind, and I finished with Del Monte, we recognized that there was a huge issue in food supply and that people want fresh, healthy produce. And in the Cincinnati area and many other communities like Cincinnati, you just can't get it. Food is tired. It's 11 days old by the time it gets on shelf. And there's a tremendous amount of food waste from the time it leaves Salinas, California, or wherever it's grown until the time it gets on the grocery store shelf. So we decided that we were going to find a better way to grow produce and be able to get healthy, fresh produce right into Cincinnati. Along the way, we discovered that there was, this was a relatively underdeveloped sector, and we found that we really didn't have a lot of technology to figure out how to really grow local for local. And so we had to start exploring and developing our own technology. Through that process, we found that we can really make huge advancements and really be impactful in the industry by partnering with people that have deep experience. And so not only am I the co-founder of 80 Acres based out of Hamilton, Ohio, but I'm also the CEO of Infinite Acres. And Infinite Acres is the technology company that was developed between 80 Acres and Priva and many of our other partners. So I'm sitting here in Europe. Today I'm in the Netherlands, which is where our core office is for Infinite Acres. And I'll be heading back to Cincinnati tomorrow. But when I think about the size of the prize, and I think about ag tech and sustainability technology and food, I agree with Alex. I think it's a huge opportunity. And one of the reasons or validations for that is if you think about the Green Deal here in Europe, and you think about the really, really tough standards that they're setting in their sustainability metrics here in Europe, 50% reduction in use of pesticides, 10% of their agricultural lands they're trying to turn into a more biodiverse section. Organic farming, they want to increase by 20%, zero pollution from runoff from fertilizers, and a reduction of fertilizers by 20%. So you think that's all great. We're going to grow more organic. We're going to use less fertilizers. We're going to use less pesticides. Chances are food isn't going to grow in those conditions. And so one of the things that I'm here doing with the support of Farm Tech Society is really introducing the idea of vertical farming and being able to have this. This is not a end all be all to all of our environmental issues and being able to feed the world and the growing population, but it certainly is a step in the right direction. And it's a component of a solution that by 2030, Europe has really strong goals. And I have a feeling that the US is working through their policy and they're trying to figure out how to be able to feed a population, how to be able to reduce food waste, and how to do it in a sustainable way. And so we have one component of that solution with AgTech.
Outstanding. And congrats on all your progress. We'll kind of come back to that in a moment. Alex, can you just go a little bit deeper into, you put out the report today, you looked at a number of kind of cluster analyses with, different aspects of, sustainable food supply chains, but give us a few of the high notes. I mean, what should the audience kind of take away before they dive into that report?
Definitely. So yeah, talking about kind of the size of the food waste problem. So the specific number that ReFed, a really great organization that focuses on reducing food waste, they put out a number on 285 billion in the US is the cost of food waste annually. So really a huge opportunity, and this is throughout the entire supply chain. So there's a number of drivers of reducing food waste or looking for sustainable products, really we're seeing consumers demand and becoming more informed about the costs of and the waste issues throughout the supply chain, and are putting that pressure on corporations. So you're seeing food companies such as Nestle, General Mills, go out and make these amazing sustainability claims to reduce waste, reduce water, reduce emissions. So,
Catherine, can you show that slide real quick? I think I pulled a slide from. I think I put it in the addendum with a couple of those corporate examples.
So, and some of these claims are pretty bold, like going weight, energy zero, cutting operational waste in half or more, and so to achieve some of these great these large goals or targets, they're going to have to look for new solutions such as indoor farming to become more efficient. So there's a number. All right, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and this kind of plays into the thesis of our webinar, which is that you've got these very influential companies, including my alma mater, including our neighbors down the road, that are setting some really bold objectives. I mean, the implications of the of the commitments are absolutely massive. And the question is, what type of startup economy kind of emerges around those moonshot objectives to, serve the need. And what I noticed when I was at Nestle is that a lot of the best innovation was coming from the long tail of startups. It's not that, IBM or Salesforce weren't kind of part of the solution, but they're some of the most exciting innovation were like the 80 acres that kind of started small and now they're kind of scaling very quickly.
Definitely. And so thinking about the supply chain, I've divided it into 5 different stages: ag, the actual food processing, kind of thinking about how the food moves from the farm to the consumer's plate. So agriculture, food processing, the actual packaging, distribution and storage, transportation, and actually 6, and retail is the last one. So in each of those stages of the supply chain, there is significant waste occurring and opportunities for innovation. So thinking about agriculture, I've seen different numbers out there, but agriculture amounts to 11 to 15% of total greenhouse gas emissions, and significant water waste and input waste. And so there's solutions like indoor farming, biological treatments, robotics, drones, regenerative farming practices. These are all sustainable practices that have an opportunity to both be profitable and achieve sustainability goals. So a lot to dig into there, and more than I can cover in this report. So
Excellent. Well,
yeah.
we'll take a few more clicks on that. And I want to move over to Tisha again. And Catherine, maybe if you could pull that food from seed to plate slide. But Tisha, can you comment first on the technology side of what Alex just referred to? And then I want to kind of connect the dots to some of the work that you were leading, not necessarily at the 80 acres level, but at the broader, kind of regional level in terms of how to address some of these issues. Because, the work that you were doing around food from seed to plate had really big food waste implications.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was an exciting group. We came together and we started thinking about seed to plate, and we started really thinking about what the impact that we needed to make in the community. And it's really all about food for all, accessibility, and all about food reduction, waste reduction. And so we tried to decide, how is it that you can begin tackling something big like food waste? And what we decided was that the best thing to do is to start mapping the supply chain. Because when you think about where our food comes from and all of the loss points, all of the touch points, and the loss points are not only in food loss, but then there's a cost associated with it, and there's shelf life loss throughout that supply chain that then leads to less healthy, less fresh food by the time it gets to our grocery store. So within our initiative, the first thing we're doing is we're mapping different supply chains for lettuces and leafy green, basil, tomato, and we can spread it out into all of the fresh foods that we get. And then once you start mapping it out, then you can start identifying what are the biggest waste points and how can we start collapsing this supply chain? How can you start eliminating the waste? How can you start driving true improvement so that we can be more sustainable, and then we can also drive more money to the farmer and better product to the consumer.
And then where do you think we are from if you thought about like this ambition versus almost like a gap analysis, and clearly 80 infinite acres are kind of, you're doing very, very important work there, but where do you think the biggest opportunities are if there's certain talent watching this webinar thinking, okay, I want to jump in this space, I think I could make a contribution? Where do you think there may be pockets of opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest opportunity in the mapping is providing resources and information. There's not a lot of information out there. So if you're a retailer, you are a member of the supply chain, or you have resources that can help us quantify and qualify a lot of this information. A big shout out to Miami University and Northern Kentucky University, because they are amazing in helping provide resources with students to be able to help us do this work. And then also EY has been helping with some guidance on how to proceed. But the idea is really that this is not an 80 thing or an infinite thing, but this is really an industry-wide and a collaborative thing, understanding truly where the food comes from, having that radical transparency. We talked a lot about radical transparency, and Alex mentioned it as well, where you really want to understand where your food came from and where the waste points are. I'd love to be able to get to that $285 billion annually and identify every single one of those loss points. But, you know, part of it is, it's just trucking your food all over the place. It's perishable goods that are meant to be able to, you know, much of it be refrigerated or within a cold chain, and it keeps breaking down every day. And so you're just losing the food along the way. And then there's tons of other waste. You know, you talk about your packaging waste, and you talk about, if nothing else, just also the carbon footprint of trucking and flying food from the field to our groceries.
Well, let's double click a little bit on the transparency piece, because you're right. That was kind of an area where everyone on our committee, even Tech Future of Freight, were in very, you know, active, you know, agreement. That was like a big issue, and even a bit of a fear too, because in a world of transparency, consumers can see right through the brand, and if they don't like things in the supply chain, they take a quick trip to the next best competitor, right? So Alex, could you comment a little bit just on the technology of transparency? And, you know, for example, you know, in our syndicate, you know, Centrifuge Syndicate Fund, you know, one of our GPs, Mercury, has a really interesting company called Topple that's kind of colliding ESG and blockchain. And they're not the only one. There's actually quite a bit of that, but it's with an eye towards total traceability, follow the product throughout the supply chain. But how much is going on there?
Right. That seems like that's definitely I would say nascent, but a nascent sector, but there's a lot of interest. I think blockchain is one of the technologies that I've seen that that has been identified. There's another one. The company is blanking on me, but I think they're basically a coffee quality analysis tool. And so thinking about these commodity crops that really they're all bundled together and sold, and then maybe quality is assessed later down the line at some point. So assessing quality at the actual farmer level, and then assigning some level of ID, and basically tracking that through the supply chain and allowing the consumer to see this coffee actually came from this farmer, which is something it's easier to do when you can assess the quality. So there's different solutions. I've seen there's a blockchain transparency company focused on seafood, and they're I'm not sure exactly how they're using that technology, but definitely something that's important to consumers and to maintaining health, thinking about food security or food safety issues throughout the supply chain. That's definitely a big risk and potentially a big loss point. The being able to assess quality earlier and then track it through the supply chain can minimize when there are food safety issues, minimizing the amount of food that needs to be tossed out or contained or recalled. I think being able to apply that visibility and transparency is definitely helpful to reducing that risk.
I'll give a great story. A friend of mine, a former colleague from Nestle, sent me, I don't know if you can see this graphic or not. He sent me this candy bar. He's now the CEO of a company called Farmer Connect, and he just got I think he got like a $9 million Series A couple of weeks ago. But it's basically just kind of reinventing the storytelling process for consumers about where the cocoa bean, you know, was sourced. And they're also doing coffee. And Yeah, on the marketing side, it actually opens up a lot of opportunity too, because I'm not sure brand marketers have really figured out how to tell that story when you have perfect transparency. But it also creates a whole different accountability factor because supply chains, especially in cocoa, especially in coffee, are really complicated, right? I mean, those are, and as I learned as I was fighting social media fires at Nestle. But Tisha, do you want to say a little bit more about this, the technology of transparency, the storytelling? I mean, you're right in the heart of it.
Yeah, I do, and it's so exciting because okay, I'm a supply chain manufacturing geek, and so I love the idea of being able to use data and match your supply and demand. And in the produce industry, that's really hard because you're figuring out what you're going to plant in the fields 18 months in advance, and you're hoping that your consumer tastes and your consumer demand is going to match what comes out of the field. And with vertical farming, we can have true transparency and real sales and operations planning with our customers and get direct consumer insights in what they're wanting to buy. So if you think about, it's really cool because you could really get your planning right, but then you can also think about driving the efficiency in manufacturing and supply chain and really reducing the food waste. So there, in vertical farming, we are to the point now where we really can match our supply to the consumer demand. And as the consumer demand shifts and things are changing in a store, then rather than having all the wrong things on the shelf and it taking you, a period of time to be able to work through that, we can change our product mix. We can change to consumer demand within 28 days. And so it really does add a lot of flexibility and efficiency within the supply chain. But it wouldn't be possible without using the right kind of technology where you're gathering consumer insights, you're understanding what your consumer demand is, and you're really understanding with a lot of sophistication how your crops are growing and really get to that predictable production. And so it's really hard to have that kind of predictability and efficiency within your operation if you're a farmer, even in a greenhouse. And so it really does drive efficiency, and which then in turn will drive the unit economics so that we will be have more accessibility for all to fresh, healthy produce.
And I know we're hitting a lot of technology, and we've got this EY sanctioned chart here, but I want to get a little bit to the real. And Catherine, do we have the quick, 1 minute reel from 80 Acres? I think is a good time to share this, and I definitely want to get your reactions, Alex.
Vertical farming is going to enable us to feed the world in a completely different way. Fresh, local food year-round.
There are several elements of technology and innovation that are coming together to enable this business model to be sustainable and successful. The ability to grow the crop with exactly what the crop wants for the result that the consumer loves. And we're taking away all of those miles of transportation and bringing to you fresh food grown locally in your community that was harvested hours ago, not days or weeks.
We have this closed data loop where we basically take all the data that we have that we are collecting during the growth process, environmentals, nutrition data, from the fertilizers, lights, pretty much everything and anything that might affect the growing crops. And then we develop predictive models so we can correlate what we observe with our input variables.
So I'm most excited about just the quality of the product, And in all the years that I've worked in produce, I've never felt like this connection to the product.
What I'm talking about here is not science fiction, it's not the future, it's not 5 years from now. It's today. It's also the only farm in a world that can grow tomatoes and cucumbers and berries in exactly the same structure.
We are
open for business. We're ready to go. We're ready to build farms in a community near you. So if you're wanting fresh local produce that tastes great and is pesticide free, is grown in a sustainable way, call us.
Now, Alex, I know we're giving a lot of airtime, a lot of local pride to 80 Infinite Acres, but can you just give us a sense of how big this vertical farming sector is? You've written about it a number of times. There's different angles on it in different geographies, but how big is this? And how is it going to change the world of food?
Yes, so I could, let's see. Wondering if I should share my
Please.
slide. Sorry, I should have this prepared. Give me 1 second.
Great background, by the way. I thought I won the background sweepstakes, but I think you might have.
He's up the game.
Tish, I bet you never get bored watching that video. That's pretty awesome.
I know. I don't. I can't.
I can't believe like 3 years ago, you guys were in Union Hall. It's amazing how these things grow. It's like.
I know.
All right, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
I think I sense it's coming. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so this is from my report that published a few months ago, so it's a little old, but yeah. So we use the term CEA interchangeably with indoor ag. I kind of like that descriptor. So CEA stands for Controlled Environment Agriculture, and so it's everything that we were just seeing in the video. What I think is really exciting about indoor ag is kind of all of the challenges of traditional ag that are resolved, and some of the benefits. So thinking about the challenges of traditional ag, the extreme weather events that are creating challenges for traditional farmers, extreme labor shortages in agriculture, and so automation opportunities, and then what we were seeing in the video, the actual controlled aspect with it, which I think is super fascinating. So being able to control for light, for humidity, for exact nutrients, and this is something that Tisha might be able to talk to more about, but just the idea of layering on AI on top of that and being able to understand exactly how what amounts of these different environmental controls can affect the output of the plant. So changing the crispness, the nutrition, the flavor, I think is super exciting. And so you're seeing a number of different startups, either operators or different systems providers or components providers that are innovating in the space. So in 2020, saw 929 million invested in this space across 41 deals, and as you can see, this is more than double what we saw in 2019, and definitely. It's a large market. It's likely growing. I've pegged it at 2.5% growth, but it's likely growing faster than that, especially within the last year. And Q1 looks like it's going to be another big quarter, and I think 2021 will be very large as well. So there's definitely a lot to unpack there, but there's a significant number of there's a lot of momentum in the space to build out capabilities around the world as different nations and regions are looking to add security and reduce vulnerabilities in their food supply chains. And then thinking about this controlled environment, all the different infrastructure that's and technologies that are being developed to be utilized within these facilities. So there's a ton of different types of tech, and I think a lot of potential. It feels like we're very early days. AI seems like it's very early in its use. But I don't know if Tisha, if I could bounce the ball over to you, I don't know if you're able to speak on that at all.
Tisha, you've got some wickedly smart investors. I'm curious. You don't share anything you shouldn't share, but I'm curious whether they see the march to the northeast corner bigger or a little bit smaller.
Yeah, no, I think that we definitely see the advantage and see that this is a bigger game than just providing salad to people. And the future for us is really about health and nutrition, and exactly what you're talking about, Alex, where we can control the output of the crop in a very natural way. We can consistently stress the crop to be able to create the phytochemicals and be able to have the plants take up nutrients, so that we are consistently providing a crop with certain stressors that will provide health and nutrition and a lot of different benefits. We view the future as being prescriptive health, and really, people, 23andMe, you can see your DNA, you can see where you came from. We believe the future is all about, based on your body composition, what kind of food that you need to be consuming, and being able to have prescriptive diets. And the beauty is with AI and with the control that we have in our farms, we are learning quickly exactly what light, what seeds, what genetics, and what conditions create that environment, create that result for the crop. And then having the predictability and the consistency in the technology allows us to be able to repeat it every time. So in nature, you can see this instantaneous, amazing thing, but with proper control in a vertical farm, you can replicate that every single day.
It's so funny. I had this vision in my mind of like 5 years from now, someone comes up and you say, "Psst, you want to pop some tomatoes?"
Well, our goal is that our tomatoes taste better than candy, and that kids are wanting to pop and eat tomatoes and eat our fresh produce instead of eating Skittles and other kinds of candy and sugar. So that's our goal.
Yeah, but you're speaking to a world where the controlling element, I forget the term, it's like foodaceuticals. I mean, but you're really bringing kind of precision benefit to, it is almost like a personalization at scale type of opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah, it's exciting times, and there's so many other opportunities, and it's just we're just new in the industry. We're a young industry, but we're learning fast, and AI is definitely contributing to us being able to learn faster and faster and really drive that kind of improvement and maturity.
And Alex, while you got the spreadsheets open, let's talk a bit about Midwest, Great Lakes region. I think you're starting to see some movement there, and I presume if 80 acres keeps growing, that will probably create a little bit of a backdraft effect as well. But let's talk a little bit about the let's kind of shift gears a bit to the center of the United States and the size of the prize and the momentum.
Definitely. So these are just a few charts. Sorry, I didn't throw it in a PowerPoint for you, but definitely gives you the idea. Hopefully you're able to see each of these. But so basically, looking at the top left one, so Midwest, we're defining that as the Midwest regions as well as the Great Lakes regions. So I don't have to go through all the states, but but as you can see, definitely steady increase since 2016. Just a lot more interest in startups within the Midwest. A lot of growth, probably maturity of the tech ecosystems there, in part thanks to Centrifuse. And so yes, definitely 2018 venture activity or deal activity grew 50% to 6.7 billion. 2020 saw 40% growth to 11.1 billion. And then looking at ag tech had a big year in general globally in 2020. A lot of venture activity in ag tech, and Midwest was no exception. It was deal values increased by a multiple of 4 in 2020, with 535 million invested. So definitely a lot of interest and a lot of tech talent growing in ag tech. Makes sense.
Any deals of note? Any deals of note that pop up? Like I think we were talking about, is it App Harvest, or there's some other kind of big players in the area?
Yeah, so App Harvest, they had their SPAC in January, and then Aero Farms is the other big indoor ag player that is scheduled to go public via SPAC. I don't know if there's a date on there yet. And then the big deal you're seeing on the top left, the indoor farming venture activity. So of the 208 million raised in 2020 for indoor farming, 99% of that, or there was a $204 million deal in Revel Greens, an indoor farming company. So be curious to see. I would expect kind of, I'm sure as you have a lot of data on this, but kind of every ecosystem, kind of you plant a seed, it grows, you have success. The tech companies kind of grow. Maybe some of them will go to the Bay Area, but they eventually want to kind of relocate to where their opportunity is, where they're familiar with, and grow grow these tech hubs. So I imagine that we'll see definitely a lot more growth within the Midwest, and see this venture activity continue to proliferate.
And Tisha, on that point, and I want to ask this in a way that I don't sound like a Cincinnati shill, but you just built a state-of-the-art facility. You and Mike even got the governor down, which I thought was really cool, or at least zoomed in. Have you found, as you've thought about scaling in that Hamilton corridor, that there's talent, cost, or other advantages?
Yeah, I mean, there's definite advantages being in the Midwest and being in our Hamilton region. First, it's all about ease of doing business, and I have to tell you that the city of Hamilton is an amazing community to work with, and you need that. I mean, the policy around vertical farming, or CEA, is still developing, and so having communities that are open to thinking about how they look at CEA is important. And so they're very open-minded and learning with us, and not slowing us down in our growth. A great workforce, affordable workforce, affordable cost of living and component costs. Have to say that we are super excited about having 100% renewable energy in Hamilton. And that was a big driver for us, a good reason to want to be there. And, we are in a great location where within 100 miles, you have many populations close to 1 million people or more. And so it really makes sense for us to be here. You also have the big codes. You have Kroger, you have, we're in Jungle Gyms, and we're in Whole Foods. And so there's a lot of great retailers. You have great distribution with US Foods and Sysco. And so it really makes sense from a food distribution standpoint to be where we are as well. So I would just say that, it's hard enough to start a business. And it's hard to start a business in an emerging industry where everyone's trying to figure it out. And so having a community that's behind you and supporting you and asking you what they can do to help is very refreshing and super important to us.
What's interesting about the Hamilton story, and for those of you who don't realize, it's just right up the road from Cincinnati, but notably, and they sit on our board, and they're really, they're kind of a great, almost like a Cinderella story, where they just went through a devastating impact of losing a handful of major paper mills. And it just about every person there was impacted by that. And, it had the potential to go down that, sad Midwest Rust Belt story. And they've kind of reinvented themselves on the backs of certain types of technology on farm tech. And that's one reason why we think there's a kind of a unique competitive advantage of the Midwest in this renewal. You've got cities that, have lost industries, but that's also kind of, and I think COVID has kind of helped in a way, kind of opened up new possibilities. And so I do think Hamilton's a really interesting turnaround story. You're a big part of that, but it's bigger than just 80 acres.
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
there's an entrepreneurial spirit I see up there that I have not seen in some of the big cities, that kind of advertise tech stuff all the time. And that's where I think, the interesting exercise is finding that hidden treasure and that kind of will to go fast.
That's right.
We want to do we're going to do a few more comments and questions, but I didn't want to miss an opportunity to do a quick pop quiz for all of you. This is kind of like, have you been paying attention, or just to test your green IQ on Earth Day. So go ahead, Catherine. What are the rules of the road? Okay, so if you see the quiz there, just quickly, oh wait, Catherine, can everybody do this?
Yes, the poll is launched.
Okay. So how much of the planet's water is consumed by agriculture? Is it working? Are people doing it?
Yep.
Okay. All righty. And then the second one, how many gallons of water have been saved from 80 acres farming technology? Wow. All right. Take a whack at that. Can we go to the next one, or is it already up there?
They're all live.
Oh, they're all live. Okay. So when do we share the results?
I can share them now.
Okay. Do we see them in charts? Let's see. Okay. All righty. Oh, so we're not gonna shame people with implicating their right or wrong answers. Tish, any quick comments on any of these? I see the last one relates to what was in the report that came out today. Alex, $285 billion, nothing to sneeze about, just on food waste. And then, wow, so that's interesting. Number 4, is that true? So just 0.25 gallons?
Yeah, our farms at 80 acres, yes, are 0.25 gallons. It's because the plants act like little pumps, and they're constantly sucking up the nutrients in the water, and then they breathe out most of it into the atmosphere. Well, we have a closed loop system that captures all of that water, all of that moisture, and we condense it and we reuse it, clean it and reuse it. So we're able to really greatly impact the amount of water that's required. And so in a conventional farm, you're actually using 250 liters of water per head of lettuce. And so it's a significant.
Well, that's really incredible. That kind of reminds me of Nestle, our chairman, Peter Brabeck. His famous quote was, we're going to run out of oil before you run out of water. No, we're going to run out of oil before, no, we're going to run out of water before we run out of oil. And, but that was kind of based on a lot of the, yesterday's food economics. And so this is pretty exciting. Let's give you both a chance to kind of give some final comments on just, where the puck is going, any technologies that excite you that we didn't have time to talk about, that maybe the readers might dig into as they, have fun with the PitchBook account. But what else would you like to share? Alex, you want to take the first swing at the bat here?
Sure. So just generally, kind of other technologies or areas of interest. I think kind of thinking about traditional ag, regenerative ag practices, so adaptive farming and grazing practices, thinking about soil health issues and rebuilding soil organic matter and biodiversity, and then this whole other topic that of carbon capture. So doing regenerative ag practices actually stores carbon in the soil. So using that as a technique for reversing climate change potentially, I think is super exciting. But I think we're very early days. When I think of regenerative farming, I think of some small hippie organic farm or something. And it's interesting to see that there's actually technologies that are supporting regenerative ag that are receiving venture investment and are really emerging technologies and concepts. So I think that's super exciting. Thinking about cellular agriculture and alt meats, we're very early days there, but we've had the first in December, the first commercialized cellular ag company, cellular ag product in Singapore, Eat Just, and so I think that's we're super early there, but thinking about kind of bringing that to table and the potential environmental benefits there, I think are really exciting. Not to mention everything going on in indoor farming, but I'll let Tisha finish up with that.
And before you wrap up, I have one quick yes or no question for you. I want to acknowledge this question from Reese Kelly for you, Alex. Do you think that the AeroFarms potential SPAC merger is a watershed moment for the CEA industry that will usher in greater investment in CEA companies?
So I won't, I guess I can't comment too much about the SPAC technology, SPAC as a method of going public. I know there are a couple of SPACs that are just paused. There's some regulatory questions on there, but it's definitely an easier path to approval and something very attractive for indoor farming companies, because some of these the indoor farming technology is something that or this concept requires a very high startup costs generally, and might take 5+ years to reach profitability. However, there's huge growth potential. So kind of trying to ship that around for an IPO can be really challenging if you're pre-revenue, but could be SPAC might be a good model for that. But yes, I think the more companies that are public, indoor farming companies that are public and kind of increasing awareness of indoor farming and allowing different types of investors, retail investors, to participate and learn more about these companies, I think is definitely a good thing to help grow the industry.
Perfect. And then Tisha, final comments, and I also want you to just see if you can throw in a quick word on a question from my dear friend Paul Fisher of HCDC. How does the U.S. recently announced pledge to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50%? Open up opportunities. I'm sure you're thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. And I think that from our perspective, 5 years ago, when Mike and I started this business, we had no idea how quickly the technology would advance. And I can tell you that 5 years from now, we will be in such a different place, that we are still learning every day. But what we are doing and what we are driving to is reducing food miles, reducing food waste, and doing it in a pesticide-free way, while we are able to recapture and reuse 97% of the water. And so there's so much more to still do, and there's so much opportunity, but we really believe that bringing healthy, fresh produce to the communities is going to help the communities live a healthy, more fulfilling life, and then also in a positive way impact the environment. We're not the only solution to the problems that we have related to our climate and to how we're currently treating the earth and the damage that farming is currently doing and other things are currently doing. But it is definitely a step in the right direction. And from a greenhouse gas perspective, it's all about being able to recapture and make sure that we're just local for local and doing it in a sustainable way.
Well, I'm so grateful, as is the entire Centrifuge team and all the attendees, for the insight that you brought to this conversation. We're really excited to dig in. Catherine, I think we've just got a couple wrap-up slides, little reminders. But this has been a fantastic conversation. It will be an ongoing conversation. But we've got a couple things you should know about. We're working on a really exciting conference in July. I'm having a hard time keeping up with everybody who wants to speak, called Repackaging the Future, which is really going to get into the future of sustainable packaging. We've also got, jump ahead, let's see. Oh, yes, I got to give a plug for Flywheel has told me on the phone they have committed to doing Sustainable Cincy 2.0. And so we're going to do another green accelerator in Cincinnati. But for those on the outside, you can also participate. And Kroger confirmed today they're going to be an active partner. So big things happening on that front. We'll keep you posted. And then don't forget about your complimentary pitch book access report. And I think the instructions are all there. So again, thank you very, very much. Reach out anytime if you want to keep the dialogue. But to Alex and Tisha, thanks so much for your time and for everything that you're doing. This topic could not be more important.